Good evening. Welcome to the Tourism, Communities, Culture and Leisure Committee. This meeting will be webcast and a record retained on the Council website for 2 years. For those at home viewing the webcast, I would like to inform you that if you look above the video, you'll see a resources tab. If you select this, a link to the agenda will appear on the right-hand side, which allows you to open the agenda in PDF form and follow the discussion and debate. I do have apologies for absence from Councillor Spriggs, and I believe Councillor Bird is here deputising. Welcome. Thank you. I understand there's a little bit of a glitch with the microphones. This one isn't turning off currently. If anybody else finds that, we'll just try and navigate through that. But let's move on to members' declarations of interest. I invite members to declare any interest. Members are asked to consider whether they have any disclosable pecuniary interests and or any other relevant interest in connection with any item on the agenda, and if so, to declare them and state the nature of that interest. No, thank you. Which moves on to item 4, which is the minutes. Has everybody managed to read the minutes from our last meeting? Is everybody happy with the accuracy of the minutes? I'm happy to propose them as accurate. Anybody wants to second? Thanks, Steve. Seconder. Thank you. That leads us on to item number 5, which is public questions, and I haven't received any. So we won't be dealing with any this evening, or statements and petitions. Not your report pack, which is the Liverpool and Wirral Coroner Area Annual Report. And I'd like to invite Andre Rebello to present this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, could I just thank Wirral Metropolitan Borough Council for their support over these last 2 years. Life has been very difficult for all of us, but though I've been in court, and fortunately we've got screens, we've got IT, and we've been able to function normally to continue delivering the service. Not every it's inquisitorial, it's not about litigation, it's about an inquiry. And the big difference with the Coroner's Court is that nobody chooses to be there. Not all deaths are reported to the coroner, but those deaths that are reported are either deaths that are unnatural, of an unknown cause, or have occurred in prison or otherwise in state detention. And therefore, the type of deaths that the Coroner's Court deal with the most marginalised people. There isn't actually a minister that looks after the bereaved. It's quite bizarre, really. And if you look at the national curriculum, bereavement and the bereavement journey that everyone will go on at some stage is not there. We actually protect children from death. Many families keep children away from funerals, and we don't actually let children grieve. So it's perhaps not surprising that in later life, when the certainty of death follows our conception, people are traumatised. There's loss, there's suffering, and people have to be facilitated on a bereavement journey. When you left home today, most of you will have said goodbye, see you later, or something of that nature. However, each one of you will have unfinished business. You might have wanted to say I love you. You might have wanted to say you're sorry for something that's happened. You might have wanted to pay a bill. But there's unfinished business that we've all got in our lives. The thing about sudden and unexpected death is you don't plan it. And when sudden and unexpected death occurs, there is devastation. There is chaos. And people need a lot of support. One of the indirect consequences of the pandemic has been the difficult circumstances in which our hospitals and social care have had to work, with regard to people not being able to visit loved ones as normal, people not being able to attend hospital with family for appointments, and people not understanding what conditions people have. The effect of that has been that in the Coroner's Court in Liverpool and Wirral, this year we've had to order an extra 300 postmortems over and above what we ordered last year. Inevitably, these are natural deaths. But they are deaths where family did not accept what doctors and social care were telling them about their conditions of loved ones, because they've not been able to visit. The report is there for you to read, but there is a problem. Though Wirral Metropolitan Borough Council and Liverpool Council have stepped up to the plate and have been totally supportive, in fact I've now got 5 administration officers supporting the court, that can't be said of Merseyside Police. 2 years ago, there was an opportunity when the then Sefton Knowsley and St Helens coroner retired to actually merge, to have one coroner for the whole of Merseyside. It didn't matter to me because I earned the same whether I cover a small area or a big area. It's just the same. But the economies of scale would have created a saving of £300,000 for Liverpool and Wirral. The 5 chief executives all signed a letter without seeing any budget proposals, without seeing any business cases, because Sefton wanted to appoint their own coroner. That was a missed opportunity and something we can live with, because every local authority is autonomous and they can choose what they want to do. However, one police force covers the 5 metropolitan areas. And within the budgets that you've got in the report, it doesn't include the cost of the coroner's officers. And there are 18 coroner's officers, and there were 12 in Liverpool and Wirral. Because there is now a very good coroner, Jules Goulding, she was one of my assistants, who's been appointed the coroner for Sefton, Knowsley and St Helens. There is now a proper service there. But a proper service requires coroner's officers to investigate. And rather than employing more coroner's officers, Merseyside Police have deployed officers that formerly served Liverpool and Wirral to Sefton. And so today, when I looked at the cases yet to be allocated to an officer, there are 56 families awaiting a phone call. I think the oldest one of those was an elderly lady from Birkenhead who died on the 3rd of October. For us in the pandemic, time seems to have stood still and things seem to have got all muddled. But I can tell you, for those of you who have been bereaved, in those early stages, the golden hour, the golden day, when all the things need to be put in place, the devastation and chaos of not receiving that phone call and the support is outrageous. The problem we have is that you'll see from the statistics, up until about 3 years ago, Liverpool and Wirral used to conclude inquests on average within 8 weeks. Nationally, in those days, it was about 28 weeks. We did that by proactive case management and actually going into court and working hard. Because we've got this lack of resource from coroner's officers who are wholly supplied by Merseyside Police, that has now slipped to 11 weeks last year. We still deal with low-hanging fruit, as I like to call them, the straightforward cases where we can deal with cases quickly. However, there are some cases that don't need to be reported to the coroner, where bodies are at Arrow Park mortuary several days before anyone can make the phone call to the GP, anyone can contact the relatives, anyone can see what the issues are. And the problem we've got is, because our timeliness is still so much better, if you look on page 16 of your agenda papers, you'll see Manchester 47 weeks and Liverpool and Wirral 11 weeks. Merseyside Police look at these figures and think, well, it will do. Well, it won't do. If you're bereaved, if you're suffering, you're entitled to be cared for by public services. When you left home today, you expected to go back. Sudden and unexpected death means that it maybe you don't get back. That chaos that you can imagine in your own family is the people that we serve. The Coroner and Justice Act, following the Tom Luce report and the Fundamental Review of Coroners and Reform of the Registration Services, and the Shipman Inquiry report, was all about putting the bereaved at the centre of the process. Yes, near on £2 million in the budget shared between Liverpool and the Wirral is a significant amount of money. But when you compare it to other budget lines, it isn't. When you look at the mental health that could be damaged by not delivering the service properly, it's difficult. I remember writing reports under what was then Rule 43 to Arrow Park Hospital some 6-7 years ago. No, 5 years ago it would be. And I write similar reports today. I've got no control whether people actually improve systems to prevent future fatalities arising. All I can do is flag up issues. And hopefully, society will learn and improve. I didn't come here to whinge, but I am passionate about what I do. I've been a coroner nearly 30 years. I was coroner in East Lancashire for 6 years before I came to Liverpool. Came to Liverpool in '99, and I've looked after both Liverpool and Wirral since 2015. We try and carry people across the threshold of the grief and loss and onto a bereavement journey of healing. And that's why the coroner's court is very different from all other legal processes. I'm very happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Try to turn your microphone off in case you get a bit of feedback, and then we'll deal with it. Yeah, there's a few glitches. Thank you. It's clear the sensitivity that you have in dealing with these issues, and I do thank you for what must have been a very difficult couple of years. You mentioned page 16 in the performance report and the table at the top, but I noticed the table at the bottom with comparative areas. That really is impressive. You know, unfortunately, we do have to measure efficiency, and it is one way of measuring it, the average waiting time. And 11 weeks is impressive compared to a couple of the other areas. There's only Birmingham and Solihull at 10 weeks. Do you feel 8 weeks is a target that you're trying to set? Is 8 weeks something that you'd be much more comfortable with?
Justice must be seen to be done, and you can't timetable it because every single individual case turns on its own facts. What these figures don't tell you is the resources that are being paid for. Certainly, if you look at the number of judiciary in each area, in Birmingham there are far more coroners sitting every day than sit in Liverpool and the Wirral. And if you actually could have access to the budgets of each area and worked out how much does it cost per death report and how much does it cost per inquest, I'm fairly confident that Liverpool and Wirral will be top of the table. That said, it's about care, it's about love, it's about support, it's about looking after the most marginalised in society. And though I would like to get back to 8 weeks, we have prison deaths, we have other complex deaths. Some can take a few years, but even though those take a few years, it's still 8 weeks to 11 weeks that we hope to achieve. The other thing that I should mention, and this is all about geography, Sefton doesn't have a district general hospital. There's a hospital at Southport, but everyone that dies in Sefton in hospital dies in Liverpool and Wirral, because Fazackley is where people go when they're ill. It's the acute hospital. And therefore, Liverpool and Wirral are carrying quite a large burden that should go to the Sefton, Knowsley and St Helens council taxpayers. I mean, Knowsley and St Helens have Wiston Hospital, but Sefton doesn't. And that's why a merger would have made sense. And that's why, politically, I've never understood why a business case wasn't considered. It's too late now. We've got to wait till a coroner leaves post or something like that. But certainly that was a missed opportunity to save a fortune. And the other thing is, if it was that there had been a merger, there would have been sufficient coroner's officers across the whole of Merseyside without the police spending any more money to actually manage the work because of economy of scales, because everyone would have been in one place.
Thank you. Yes, I can sense your frustration that it didn't happen. We have other members who'd like to ask you a few questions, if that's okay. Councillor Kenny.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank through you, Andre, for the report. I believe all we're being asked to do tonight basically is to note the report, which I'm happy to do. But before you even started speaking, I'd already written down basically a question as to why, for the last 6.5 years, we've had the merger of Liverpool and Wirral, but yet not other authorities within the Liverpool City region, because nowadays more and more work is done within the Liverpool City region. And you mentioned the police within the fire authority, the Merseyside Fire and Rescue Authority. It's all done with 5 authorities in this particular area. Now, so I still can't really understand now why there's no suggestion that there could be merger involving the other authorities. Now, you've actually said that it's too late now. Can you clarify what you mean by that? Because I would have thought that if the experience that we've had over the last 6.5 years between Liverpool and Wirral shows that we can give, if you like, a better service, for want of another expression, I can't see why, looking ahead for the future, we can't consider again the possibility of other authorities coming in. So when you say it's too late now, can you clarify, please?
Because a new coroner has been appointed in Sefton, Knowsley and St Helens, and though the Ministry of Justice and the Chief Coroner were very keen that there should be a merger for the 5 authorities that make up Merseyside, Sefton were completely against it. My gripe is really that without a business case, chief executives agreed that that could happen, that there shouldn't be a merger. Notwithstanding, no one had actually worked out what the savings were, what the benefit was for the public and things of that nature. That said, the senior coroner that's been appointed is of a similar age in life to me, and he can't go on forever. So when that coroner goes, or I fall off my perch, almost certainly there will be suggestions from the Ministry of Justice that there should be a merger. And I suspect, given the light of experience, the Ministry of Justice and the Chief Coroner's Office are likely to be more robust, as I would expect all the other councils to be, because you can't make political decisions without looking at facts and figures. And that decision was made with no evidence. I'm not criticising anyone, because it would be wrong for a member of the judiciary to criticise the executive. But I'm puzzled as to how politics can function without facts and evidence.
Thank you. Yes, we sense your frustration, and we are all members of a committee that's very keen to look at evidence-based decisions where they fall within our remit. Councillor Wood?
Thank you. Councillor Kenny has actually covered some of the points that I was going to raise, but Andre, thank you for bringing the report, but actually presenting something in such, well, I feel quite moved and quite emotional by some of the things that you've actually sort of painted there, and it makes it real and gives us understanding as to what the day-to-day role is of Coroner's Office. But my thoughts are the same as Councillor Kenny's, is that although you're saying that time has gone and it's waiting till somebody else leaves post, is that, do you feel that from what you have painted in a picture of the work of the service, that there is scope now to actually start meeting, thinking about what the future plans may be and how to improve it? So basically, I mean, do you have a solution set there that you could offer, and do you feel that there is scope then for you, along with other coroners throughout the city region, throughout Merseyside, to be able to start this discussion point, therefore be ready for any future change that could potentially be?
The Ministry of Justice, the Secretary of State for Justice, has government responsibility for the coroner areas. The Secretary of State for Justice was firmly of the view that there should be a merger. However, national politicians, you may not feel this, but national politicians tend not to want to upset local politicians. And if they're told that local politicians don't want something to happen, they won't push it. And that's the problem. What should happen now is the 5 authorities in Merseyside should be agreeing in principle that when an opportunity becomes available, that that is the way forward. It's unlikely to be me who's the coroner. I'm 64 this weekend. I don't have a retirement age. I think my wife has a retirement age in mind, and I don't know when that is, but I've got no intention of retiring, but I suspect I'll be forced to retire or divorce, one or the other, because that's the way things are. But I understand I'll get my old age pension in 2 years' time, and I suspect that may be one of the times when my wife is thinking. That said, I'm passionate about being coroner, and you know, I've got no intention of going anywhere. But if it is that shared services are discussed at a city region level, and the problem we've got is Halton, in that Halton's not part of Merseyside. Halton's part of the Cheshire coroner area. We've got 2 coroner areas in Merseyside. It was very easy, and it's a very compact area, to have merged the 2 years ago. And we wouldn't have half the problems we've got now had that happened. But if it is that politicians agree that at the first opportunity that that is the way forward, the Ministry of Justice don't need to be pushed, because they would agree that that should happen. The problem is, I'm not sure this actually came to politicians other than politicians in Sefton. I think it was probably just the politicians in Sefton, and then at a Liverpool City region, a letter was signed on behalf of all the local authorities. I haven't found anywhere in any minutes for any of the local authorities that councillors, elected councillors, didn't want a merger.
Thank you. And I can see that this is such a pertinent and almost personal issue to you, as well as it being professional.
56 families who are waiting to speak to my office, and we haven't got the staff.
If I may then, Chair, I mean, I would dearly like to have a conversation with you outside of this forum. I'd like to understand more from a very personal perspective from everything that you've presented here this evening. But I think that you've got solutions or thoughts about how those solutions could actually be, and it's that I'm interested in, is as to how you present that and then how you get that information out.
What I would say is that because of certain unfortunate circumstances, David Armstrong spent a significant number of days actually in the coroner's court, and I would welcome any councillor to visit the court, to sit with the officers, to see what it's like on the coalface, to actually come into court and watch inquests. Because what I always say to everybody is, it is so much better to actually see an inquest for somebody that you're not connected with than actually go to a court when it's one of your own loved ones who's died. Because it's important to actually see what we do and how we do it. And if anyone wants to come to the coroner's court to see what happens, you'll be more than welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Brain?
Thank you, Chair. And can I say that I think this is one of the most powerful and sobering reports that we've received at this committee. Can I thank you very much for your words today. I want to start by admitting my complete ignorance. Prior to this being on the agenda, I hadn't even realised that this was part of our responsibility. It's a service that most of us don't come into contact with in the normal course of events. But for those families who do, it is clearly absolutely an essential service. And I think in many ways the most powerful bit of the report was the page of compliments, where you have selected comments from people who have been supported in the darkest hours of their family lives to get through that situation. And I think it brings home to us really what a valuable and essential service this is. I don't want to labour the point that Councillor Kenny and Councillor Wood have been making, but I'm sure we're all concerned about this inability of the councils to work together and over this issue. And maybe I've read too much into it, but it seems to me you were suggesting that the Sefton Authority, with a number of its deaths taking place in Thurzackley, was somehow facing a lower bill for providing this service than perhaps other authorities, and maybe that financial imperative was one of the factors that made Sefton decide not to go ahead with a merger. But I think what we do need to do, and I'm not sure it's within our remit, but we do need to find some mechanism for looking at this on a county-wide basis the next time we have to make an appointment, because the case you have made is so powerful. And I would just conclude by saying a word of thanks to yourself and to your officers and staff for clearly providing an absolutely essential and highly appreciated service.
Could I just say that it goes further than Thurzackley Hospital? Because in Liverpool we have Oak Coast Prison, which serves North Wales. So an awful lot of people who are first-time offenders in North Wales come to Liverpool. We have the prison at Walton, HMP Liverpool, and I'm fairly confident there is many people from Bootle there as there are from the Wirral and Liverpool. But if there's a death there, the council taxpayers of Liverpool and Wirral pay for it. We've got the Heart and Chest Hospital, we've got the Liverpool Women's Hospital, we've got Alderhay, and we've got Clatterbridge. And these are tertiary centres of excellence, world-class tertiary centres of excellence that serve in particular the whole of Merseyside and the region. But of course, when there's a death in these establishments, only the Liverpool and Wirral council taxpayers pay for the service. So it goes a little bit further than just Thurzackley Hospital. The other thing, the reports is down to the Coroner Service Manager, Rochelle Neild. She's the one with the ability to do pretty graphs and do the words and keep me on the right side of not being politically incorrect, because I would have included an awful lot in that report that perhaps wouldn't have been appropriate to put in a report that's been published, because I call a spade, and basically I would have said as it is, as opposed to putting a little bit of a gloss on it by missing some things out. The other thing is, though I may not have many coroner's officers to actually manage the caseload that we're currently having to deal with, I've got the best coroner's officers and the best administrative staff in the world. They are dedicated, caring, compassionate. If you think that someone's not been able to visit a care home and their loved one dies, and then they have to wait several days before they get a phone call from the coroner's office to say the death's been reported, my coroner's officers and the admin team that field the calls are treated like punch bags. They are a buffer. They are the first point of officialdom that contact rightly upset bereaved relatives. And they are on the edge. There's not enough of them. The admin team are now fielding all the inbox for all the contact with the court. We've introduced digital online reporting of deaths. To try and get GPs to do that is somewhat difficult. They're challenged in using computers. But we're getting there. But the staff are absolutely brilliant. And basically the service is, in effect, the coroner and all the duties fall on the coroner. But without the staff, I won't be able to do anything. They are absolutely superb. If you came into the court and sat with the officers and listened to how they listen, talk and explain to people at the lowest ebb in their lives, it's upsetting. I've always said the first day I don't get upset when I go to work as coroner is the day after I should have retired, because we are dealing with very poignant, real resources, human resources. We recognise in everybody our own humanity, and though we don't know the people who died, what we do know is that they're ordinary families just like yours and mine, and they're entitled to the same service that we would expect. So you make a good point with regard to Fazakerley Hospital, but it goes broader than that.
Thank you. And I'd like to echo certainly the compliments we can read there. And I'm sure you'll be able to carry our thanks back to your staff as well, who we can clearly see you hold in high regard. Councillor Bird has a question.
Thank you, and thanks to your team also, and thanks for coming here this evening. And thank you for calling a spade also. We clearly do need to bring down the waiting time that families having to wait for a call from your office, and also the number of families that are having to wait beyond a reasonable amount of time. Can I ask about a different aspect to your work, which is the reports to prevent future deaths, the Regulation 28 reports? And last year you had to issue 7 of those reports to public bodies about further action they should be taking to prevent future deaths. And I was wondering, how many of those reports did you have to make in 2019? And of all these reports to prevent future deaths, how satisfied are you with the authorities' responses, particularly the authorities that cover the Wirral area? Thanks.
It's difficult without the annual statistical report for me to tell you exactly. I suspect we probably issued a similar number the previous year. Some coroners never hold an inquest without writing a report. I'm very particular that I only write a report when it's necessary. And the reason for that is the parable or whatever of the little boy that cried wolf. Because when you write a report, you mean it. You shouldn't just find an excuse to write a report. It's got to be because you want an explanation as to what can change to prevent future deaths. These are not recommendations. These are one example, somebody's gone into Arrow Park Hospital, they've been seen by mental health workers, they've left before they've been, so they haven't been seen by mental health workers, they've left before they've been seen, and then they've been found dead. And the report I wrote about 2 or 3 weeks ago to Arrow Park and to the ambulance service was, why was this person taken to a place of safety not looked after? I'm waiting for a reply to that. But that's the kind of report I write, because if somebody is in extremis and they're taken to a place of safety under Section 136 of the Mental Health Act by the police, a place of safety is somewhere where they should be looked after. They should be triaged. There should be someone with them till someone takes over and they're assessed. And they shouldn't necessarily be allowed to just wander out without anyone knowing where they've gone. Someone should be with them. So that's one example. We write reports based upon the evidence that we receive on a case-by-case basis. There's no power if people send a very anodyne reply saying, thank you for your report, the contents of which we note. What you can do, however, is if a future death occurs, the chances are I'll be the coroner that receives it. And if things haven't been fixed, we can then refer back to previous letters and say, you haven't fixed it. Or we can actually call an authority to come and give evidence at somebody else's inquest, saying this was raised with you then, what have you done about it? It's not like a public inquiry report. It's basically to flag up trends so that policymakers can actually put extra resources in to actually improve services. That's the intention behind Regulation 28 reports.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you very much for your report. Thank you. And for this evening and the way that you've presented it to us with such empathy and such care. Amazing. You've silenced this room on so many levels, I think. Beautiful space. I just want to refer to page 18 and the compliments and actually look at some of that in detail, because this is at the time when people have had a really difficult bereavement and they're waiting for the coroner's verdict, etc. And some of the comments that people write in the light of that, I think, are some of the most amazing compliments I've ever read about people. And I work in the realm of HR as a field. So, you know, the words they use: amazing, courteous, patient, kind, helping us through an extremely traumatic experience, you know, helpful in dealing with the process. Those kinds of words, when people are faced with such difficult times themselves, are a true compliment to you and the service you're offering. So I'd really like to say a huge thank you.
What I would say is it's mainly the officers. It's the officers that are at the coalface, and they are amazing. They are really amazing.
Thank you. And I would say in relation to that, that's also the leaders and the leaders in the service that are leading those officers as well, are doing that sort of service. So I think we come back full circle, all in agreement as well, about that £300,000 lost opportunity of savings and the need to investigate that potentially retrospectively as a decision-making process, but also going forward, see what can be done to remedy that particular situation. I would say it sounds like a poor decision that was made at that point in time. But thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report, Andre. You talk about the workload. What, in your opinion, would be, for your area, Liverpool and Wirral, would be the optimum number of coroner's investigative officers to serve and to keep your workload at a good level?
I suspect we probably need 2 or 3 more officers. What actually happened was one of the senior coroner's officers was moved to Sefton. Another coroner's officer was then promoted, so we lost that one as well. And then another officer was sent to Sefton, so we lost 3. Since then, we've lost 1 to bereavement leave, who's not been replaced, and another 1 to long-term ill health, who is being replaced. But of course, when you bring a new member of staff in, you actually take away another officer to train them. So you actually lose 2 officers in the short term, and at this time we can't really afford to be losing any extra officers. But I would have thought 3 or 4 more officers would help. In fact, half an officer would help. We were used to speaking to families the day or the day after a death's reported. It's unacceptable that some people are waiting 8 days or more. And of course, you wait 8 days or more. If we just deal with the Wirral, if the bodies go to the mortuary, which is the public mortuary at Arrow Park, the pathologist, if we have to have a post-mortem, the pathologist there will only work on certain days. So if we wait 8 days, and then we have to have a post-mortem, which we try and avoid in every case, but if we have to have a post-mortem, it may be another week or 2 before we can actually release the body for funeral. The quality of the evidence from a post-mortem examination does not improve with time. it's important to have a post-mortem in a timely manner. And therefore, you know, I'm very frustrated by the current infrastructure given the workload.
Thank you. I don't want to add any more workload to what clearly is a very busy team. If you were able to quantify the level of service you're providing for other authorities that are not Liverpool and Wirral, if, you know, magically I'd like it to be the same as 2 or 3 more officers, but if you were able to quantify that, is that something you'd be able to come back to us with? How much? Because if there was an opportunity to recharge the other authority, I'd be happy to recharge the other authority.
I think that's difficult because there are 85 separate coroner areas. Each has a completely different infrastructure, and everyone's very shy with regard to their budgets. Some include in the budgets buildings, some don't. Some include all the coroners and the assistant coroners, others don't. And therefore you're never comparing like with like. And so it is very difficult. And in fact, the police will turn around and say we've got more coroners officers per death report in Liverpool and Wirral than in most areas. Well, we probably have. But 47 weeks average turnaround time is unacceptable. We're supposed to put the bereaved at the centre of the process. And what has happened since the missed opportunity of the merger is what was the gold standard that was held out by the Ministry of Justice for everyone to follow has started to slip. And that is frustrating. So it is difficult to do that. What we know is that the caseload each officer carries is significant. In Liverpool and Wirral, we have very, very complex cases. We have 33 outstanding prison cases waiting to be listed. We've got listings of 1 or 2 cases for the whole of next year. To try and fit those in, we will be going 2 or 3 years hence. We've also got at least 10 significant complex cases that will last 2 or 3 days. To try and accommodate those is difficult. We're already listing straightforward cases in January. This was never the case before. I'm getting cases presented to me on the week of a hearing. We need cases before then. We need more officers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My recollection is that it's a good few years since you were appointed, sir, and I recall that around about 2012-2013 there was a Cabinet report to Wirral's members, and it was discussed amongst our leaders at the time about how Wirral and Liverpool might merge based on what was happening in retirements at the time. I think I'm long enough in the tooth to remember Mr. Roy Barter, so that's going back probably a quarter of a century. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was. I'm beginning to show my age. First of all, like most members, I've had no involvement with the coroner's office except in one case involving the death of a young person in my community on a motorcycle. When I read the detailed reports, and therefore I realised just how much investigative work has to take place on every single case, every single tragedy, which means such a lot to the families. I hear what you say about the pressures on your staff being the first line of people that get telephoned and act as almost not the punch bag but a sponge absorbing all the pressures and fears and anxieties of the families. So I thoroughly sympathise with them and hope that we may find a way of supporting them. I want to look at what's happening in legislation, because the 2009 Act, which is the Coroners and Justice Act, it appears to be being reconsidered, and it's being reconsidered as part of the Health and Care Bill, which is currently going through the Commons. The Health and Care Bill has been, or is going through, something like 14 public sessions of a committee scrutinising it in the Commons, and I've quite lost track. But clause 124 of the bill seems to be, the wrong word is a peg, but it may present an opportunity. Because, Chair, I understand that clause 124 of the Health and Care Bill is all about medical examiners. And the issue of medical examiners was touched on in your report. You'll put me right, because the medical examiners are the people looking in the hospital trying to decide whether a case comes to you or not. I may have got it wrong. But the Health and Care Bill appears to request, or even will, if it goes through, tell the health service that every health trust body, whoever has them, will have to appoint an examiner. And that seems to me, Chair, to present an opportunity for us to look across the system and across the health service, because we'll be part, we may likely to be part, subject to what Brian has to say on council on Monday, we like to be part of a Merseyside and Cheshire health structure at some point. But it may give us a chance to look at how the coroners and medical examiners fit in and work together. Going back to my point, Chair, about 2013, I think it was, when Mr Johnson was retiring and we last looked at it, if there is an opportunity, and an ordinary committee report, you'll forgive me, coming to a committee like this might not actually reach the hands of the council leader unless members specifically draw the leader's attention to it. It occurs to me that as a committee we should ask if the report can be drawn to the attention of the leader, so it might well be discussed by the other Merseyside leaders to see if there's a way forward and whether there's a way of assessing the different pressures within the structure and assisting some of the resolutions that might be required. I'm trying to press the button to turn it off.
We
I'm
all
sorry.
are, thank you. Everybody's struggling with the same issue. Thank you, Councillor Gilchrist. I'm happy to take that as a recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brain's happy to second. And I understand, obviously, you sit on the Health and Wellbeing Board as well, so it may be something that we're looking at across the piece. But I'm happy to add to our recommendation to note the report.
Madam Chair, could I just clarify something arising from Councillor Gilchrist's comments? Under the Coroner and Justice Act, local authorities were responsible for medical examiners. The medical examiner programme has been running on a voluntary basis, but through district general hospitals. About 3 months ago, it rolled out to primary care. The health bill that's going through is actually putting that on a statutory footing. The idea is that for every death not reported to the coroner, there be a proportionate scrutiny by a medical examiner, and this is to avoid the Dr. Shipman effect, and that's what it was all about. The problem we've got is that because the medical examiners are at the teething stage, actually more deaths are being reported to the coroner service than probably need to be reported, because the joint training between coroners and medical examiners that was due 2 years ago has been put on hold because of the pandemic. And therefore it's only when that joint training goes ahead that Alan Fletcher, the National Medical Examiner, and Tommy Teague, the Chief Coroner, will be able to put together some guidance. I know about this because I'm the Secretary of the Coroner's Society of England and Wales and gave evidence to the Justice Committee with regard to these very proposals. I've been invited to also give evidence next on the 1st of November in Portcullis House with regard to the Judicial Review Bill, and that is going to put some minor changes to the coronial legislation. I just got an email just as I was coming in here asking if I'd give evidence with regard to that. That's just enabling coroners to do remote hearings and a few other little things, but nothing significant, such as the medical examiner scheme. I mean, clearly coroners and medical examiners have to work alongside each other, and we don't want to over-bureaucratise death. But it's important that we do have a safeguard against homicidal doctors that may still exist.
Thank you. But I think the suggestion as a recommendation will still take, not least of all, the leader of Wirral Council is also the deputy leader of the Liverpool City region, and that combined authority is something that I think we'll have to start those conversations that Councillor Wood was alluding to might be helpful. I just had Councillor Booth as our last contributor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Andre, for the report that you presented. And just referring to page 19 on the figures, given that Wirral's cost for coroner services in 1920 was just over 700,000, I know it's a horrible thing to project, but given that this could be the responsibility of this committee, is there any idea of a projected cost that could be incurred going forward? Just an idea, or any work that can be done maybe in that area? Thanks, Chair.
It's better to tap.
With the pandemic, and because of excess deaths, and because you only die once, there's going to be fewer death reports reported. However, the complexity of those death reports is more intense, and as I've indicated, we've had to order another 300 post-mortems over and above what we did the previous year, because families don't trust what they're being told. I suspect that the costs will probably be higher. Inquests are more complex. People have more questions. I'm having to call more healthcare professionals to court to give evidence. Tomorrow, I've got 3 intensivists actually coming to court to give evidence to explain something. At this stage of the pandemic, I would like intensivists to actually be in intensive care, managing people on respirators. They're coming to the coroner's court to explain something that happened a few months ago, and it's very frustrating. I can't say to the family, well, there's nothing in that. I've got to be evidence-led, and the families are entitled to ask questions. So the answer to your question is it's unknown. The other thing is, if Lockerbie had occurred a short time earlier, it could have been around here. We'd have then had a massive budget to pay for, because central government don't pick up the bill for things of that nature. It's a demand-led service. It all depends on the number of unexplained and unnatural deaths that actually occur. And it's a problem. I mean, I'm expecting excess deaths from flu, given we've all lost our immunity. We've been locked up for the last 2 years. People are not necessarily taking up the vaccines that are now available. We've still got a lower rate of vaccination for COVID. It's bizarre. I believe France and other countries have actually accelerated beyond us. I just don't understand it. So there will be challenges ahead, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to committee. Thank you for bringing the report.
No problem, thank you.
On a personal note, I really hope we can do something to mitigate some of the challenges that you've been dealing with, at least before your wife's retirement date that she's deciding for you currently. Because, yeah, I think we'll need to try to help to resolve this. And you can see in the room there's plenty of political will behind that. But thank you. So the recommendation was originally to note the report with the addition, which I'm assuming everybody's happy with, from Councillor Gilchrist. Are we all happy to agree by assent? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. So that brings us on to item number 7, Public Safety Protection Order for Birkenhead and Seacombe. In the pack, it's on pages 21 to 50. I'd like to invite Nikki Butterworth to present the report, but we also have Joe Burrell here, who's able to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report recommends the implementation of a public space protection order in the Birkenhead, Tranmere and Seacombe Safer Streets 2 programme area for a period of 3 years. And the public space protection order is lawfully required to restrict access to alleyways to help mitigate crime in those areas and with areas of high levels of crime such as burglary, theft, bike theft, car theft. And the recommendations in the report pack is that the Tourism, Communities, Culture and Leisure Committee approve the implementation of the Public Space Protection Order for Birkenhead and Seacombe Safer Streets 2 area. It is all details are set out in Appendix 1 of the report. And just some background, the Safer Streets programme is an annual grant from the Home Office targeting areas with those high levels of burglaries and thefts. And the Safer Streets 2 project and programme, that follows on from the successful Safer Streets 1 project in North Birkenhead, which Wirral was successfully awarded funding for, and we have been awarded funding from the Home Office for the Safer Streets 2 project, and this focuses on central Birkenhead and Seacombe areas. This project will be delivered between July 21 and March 22. The project is led by Wirral Council and in partnership with Merseyside Police and the Police and Crime Commissioner. And Joe is here to help with any questions and has been a key officer on delivering the programme outcomes and initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor Cleary?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Well, first of all, congratulations to everybody for getting the additional funding. It's really, really good news. And I know that certainly residents in my ward are really, really pleased. And I'd just like to say that the choice, certainly in my ward of Birkenhead and Tranmere, the choice of alley gates has certainly corresponded to my own kind of, I suppose, experience of where there's a lot of issues, and a lot of issues have been reported over many, many years. So it's really, really positive. I just had a couple of questions arising out of the report. First of all, as it points out, the alley gates are really effective in terms of crime reduction, and there's something in the order, I think it's over a third crime reduction that you get when alley gates are installed. It's much more problematic when it comes to fly tipping. There is some positive impact because you'll tend to get less of people driving up and dumping, but as we know, most fly tipping comes from people who live in the areas affected. And of course, what we do see over time is an increasing number of streets where residents take ownership of alleyways, and we've seen some absolutely fantastic examples, and certainly in my own ward where people have really kind of taken over those spaces and turned them from a liability into an asset. And of course that has real benefits, not just for the community but for the council as well, in terms of not having to clear up a space that is being actively looked after. So I noticed in the budget, it goes through all of the items that the money would be spent on, the alley gates, the CCTV, etc., etc. There's nothing in there for actually supporting residents on an ongoing basis, and I was just wondering if that was considered at all, because the council has a really positive role to play along with other agencies in supporting residents going forward, and it makes a real difference. Very small amounts of money and very small amounts of support just to kind of add to what residents are already doing. So I was just wondering if that was actually considered at all, or if there's any potential within the budget to provide for that. And then my second question was around, I asked at Policy and Resources some months ago that we specifically look at community wealth building initiatives, and that's now been added to all of our Policy and Service Committee reports. It's item 11 on all the reports, so that's really good to see, and it does point out that there's obvious benefits to our communities from this initiative. Obviously, one of the other things with community wealth building is trying to kind of maximise the Wirral pound, etc. And I was just wondering if there was any choice available in terms of who supplies the alley gates, whether we, I don't know if that's kind of a monopoly supplier and we kind of don't have much leeway, but if that was looked into at all in terms of where we source the actual materials from, whether there was any kind of community wealth building aspects to that. So But thanks again. It's great news, really, really positive, and just had those couple of questions. Thanks, Chair.
Hi, I'm Jo Burrell from the Neighbourhoods team, and as Nikki said, I've been working on Safer Streets 2 for the past few months. In answer to Pat's Councillor Cleary's first query about have we got any funding available to help transform the alleyways? We have £12,000 out of the overall Safer Streets 2 bid, and we've used that for alleyway cleansing. So a lot of the alleyways that we've identified in Birkenhead, Tranmere and Seacombe needed to get to a base level where the residents could come together and start transforming. So we've actually already cleared them completely, and that is getting rid of all the fly tipping and other items in the alleyway, but also then clearing them of weeds, so getting into the cobbles and clearing the weeds right back, and also the shrubs, because as you know, the buddleia and other shrubs that are quite strong shrubs need to be cut back, and then everything needs to be sprayed to sort of get to a base level. So all the identified alleyways are at a base level now, but we have identified residents who want to work with us to transform their own alleyways. So we had looked at ways of doing this, and I've been speaking to Magenta because Magenta has got they are a stakeholder in some of these areas, and they're putting in some match funding that was part of the original bid. So we're going to be working with them in various places to start community gardens and allotments, because one of the identified areas is quite a big landlocked area in Seacombe by Oakdale Road and Lucerne Road, and it's an area of high antisocial behaviour, a lot of police reports, but it's also like a brilliant opportunity to develop that area. It's a fantastic piece of land and it's got loads of potential, and it's something that Magenta would be very interested in developing. So that's one sort of option, and it's a similar sort of option in North Park Court, which again is in Seacombe. The Magenta housing that are involved in this project tend to have quite a lot of land around them, so it gives more of a sort of community garden, vegetable growing potential. But already we've had residents come forward who started their own alleyway transformations. Denman Grove in Seacombe have put their planters out now that it's clear to a base level, and it'll be continued to be cleansed in the 4-weekly schedule, because access will be easy into those alleyways now. So they've started getting their planters out, seating areas, and then this is something that we obviously want to support and add momentum to. So we've been looking at to the Wirral Together Fund, and the councillors there are happy to support it, as you have done for many alleyways in Birkenhead and Tranmere, so we can get them going. And we've established a really good sort of network, because we've done 12 alleyways now, and we had a sort of workshop in with Wirral Environmental Network, where we said what went well, what didn't work well, what would you like to help us support you in sustaining your transformations. So we've got quite a good idea now how we can support them, and we're encouraging this network between the different alleyways, so they can look at funding through Awards for All and different funding opportunities. Quite a lot of them who are well established now have constitutions and bank accounts, and this is something that we'd really like to encourage, because they'll be able to manage their own communal space. And it's really, really important, because I know a lot of people here have been involved in them and know how much benefit they have for the residents, but we've got a lot of feedback, and we're collating case studies at the moment. We're trying to quantify the benefit that these case studies are telling us, but people are telling us how much during COVID having that neighbourhood contact has really helped their health and well-being. And you know, there's a lot of people who are on their own, who were isolated in lockdown, whose neighbours began looking out for them more. And this is really basic things that people need to enjoy their lives. And the feedback we've had has been so strong. We are collating it, and we're trying to replicate good practice from different alleyways. So we don't underestimate the benefit of it. And we've even been told, and it's actually, I think it's in Councillor Wood's ward, that they've had feedback that the transformed alleyways have added additional value to the houses, which is a fantastic outcome, because originally it's just to clean up the alleyways and make them look good, and there's been some really excellent feedback, which I think, you know, we can use to replicate and look for funding to continue that right across some of the other areas. In Birkenhead and Tranmere, we've definitely got quite a few identified that we could let. And the residents have also done it on their own, like Larch Road, haven't they, where it looks fantastic. They've got murals, planters, and some of those areas, the terraced houses with not a lot of green space nearby, so having the ability to let their children play in a safe area is really positive as well.
Thank you. Just on the procurement, I think Nicky Butler
Yeah.
can come in on the gates.
Thanks, Councillor Cleary. So we have social value policy and all our specifications, and the alley gates would include an element which is weighted and scored within the tender and bid process around social value. There's a lot of flexibility in there because we don't want to constrict the possible provider into what they would do for a local community, for the environment. So we encourage as much innovation, but that is scored through our social value policy. So that ensures equity, so all bids can be considered, and we can then look at what added value through that social value for those local areas through the supply of the gates.
Yeah, thanks for those answers. Just, I mean, Joe gave a great kind of summary there of the really positive work that's going on, the positive things that have been achieved, and what a positive impact it has. And I just kind of think for all of us as members, there's an opportunity there to kind of invest to save, really, with these kind of initiatives, because we know what a problem a lot of alleyways are and how they can drag an area down. And here you have the opposite happening, and it has really positive social impacts, positive financial impacts from the council. And the thing about house prices is a really good one to put into our next kind of, if we can, you know, work that into a press release going forward, you know, because that's the kind of thing that will further encourage more and more people. This is what I find, that as more and more people do it, more and more people want to do it, and there's a really positive feedback effect. So thanks again for everything you're doing, Joe. It's really great, and let's have lots more of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Microphone hasn't worked. Councillor Brain.
Oh, we're on. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think we're okay now. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Joe, for our report. I agree entirely with Councillor Cleary. I think this initiative is something that is completely transformational. A ward like Oxton, we have a number of terraced houses with alleyways, and some of those are just so depressing. And if we can make those alleyways places that feel safe, that feel welcoming, it just, as you say, it adds value to the houses, but it adds to the well-being of the community. I mean, I think one of the issues that you know, obviously we talk about the antisocial behaviour and the theft and so forth, which will be drastically reduced by introducing alley gates. But we do have this problem of fly tipping. It is sadly, in many cases, some of the residents themselves who do dump stuff in the alleyways. And we find, I think what I've discovered in my ward several times, is it's been tenants who have moved out of rented accommodation and as a farewell present have left us their unwanted belongings in the alleyway. And that is such a difficult issue to address. But I would like to thank the environmental team who have been really reacted very promptly when I've raised this sort of issue in clearing the alleyways. Another positive thing is related to this is that we're now going to be weed spraying in the unadopted alleyways from when the new contract is introduced next year, which is excellent. But as the point was made before, as Joe was saying, we need to make sure the conditions of the alleyways is brought down to a base level, because in many places we've got Budlier that has taken over half the alleyway or items that have been dumped. So we've got to make sure that these alleyways are accessible for the weed spraying team to get in there and then to keep the things under control. And then ultimately to give the control back to the residents, let them take control over their own environment and join together so that community cohesion and a sense of well-being can be fostered. These can be spaces that we can actually be proud of and value, rather than something to be ignored and feel slightly ashamed about. So I think this, as I said at the beginning, is a really transformational project, and we need to endorse it entirely.
Thank you. Councillor Wood.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, Nikki, and Joe, for everything that you've outlined. I mean, I've had the privilege of being able to speak to you even this week to get a further update and outline of what the sort of interactions would be from one community to the other. My only thoughts, and I said this to you anyway, is that, you know, I'd like to see more of it. I'd like to see that in the future that we as an authority see this as a positive benefit, and actually there will be cost savings by doing this, because it will impact on health and well-being. All the things that you've said already, Alan. And you know, for me, it's about, I don't want to say it's about cleaning and greening, because I'll avoid the greening word, but I'd say it's about enhancing and planting, and it's about developing those communities. So I just want to thank Jo for all, and everybody that works with Jo, for all the tremendous work that she's done across the ward that I represent in Clawton, and obviously, you know, the work that's ongoing with Seacombe and in Birkenhead. So it's not so much a question, it's a big thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson. I do hope we're going to edit all of these out. It's going to make for a 4-hour meeting. I'm pleased everyone's bearing with us all.
Right, there we are. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Nikki and Joe, for the report. I'd like to encourage us to think about measurements of success. Thank you, both from a qualitative and a quantitative angle. So drawing upon what the residents are saying, because even in the report, they were very excited about the fact that you were starting to embark on this project. But I think if we can do that and expand on the lessons learned, we can then take that forward to other wards. I would say that there are areas of deprivation in many wards across our Wirral area, and sometimes it's a bit simplistic, very simplistic, to just put that into one side or a few wards within the Wirral. I think we need to be looking at all areas of deprivation, actually, and then expanding this far wider than the area that we're currently looking at here. And as you'll know, we have a PSPO, for instance, in West Kirby, and there's a lot of ASB and residual behaviour and challenges that we currently have in that ward that we have been taking up with the police. It might not be affected by alley gates necessarily, some of it might be, some of it isn't, but I do think there's a wider piece of work here to be done as well about the lessons learned about building community, reducing ASB, and what can be done in a wider sense for the entirety of our borough. So I just encourage us to think like that too. And thank you very much again for all the work you're doing. Absolutely fantastic. And I think I'd like to go and see some of the examples that Councillor Cleary's talking about and see the transformation, because it really is a testament to you that that's happening. So thank you.
Sorry, I missed out Councillor Williams. I went to the wrong direction. You were just slightly ahead of Jenny, and then Councillor Kenny.
Thanks, Chair. Just one question, really. On the legal implications, 5.8 it talks about the order being enforceable by council officers and police officers within Merseyside Police. Slightly unusual word in that. Does that mean that the police officers have to be Merseyside police officers, or are they working in the Merseyside police area, or are they excluding like BTP police or tunnel police, etc.? Do we know why that's in there written like that?
Thanks, Councillor Williams. The template for this PSBO came from Safer Streets 1, and I'm not entirely sure the detail of why it's Merseyside Police, but I assume that's because they will be the ones that would be contacted regarding anyone entering the PSBO area who hasn't got an adjoining business or resident, because how it works is each person who's got an adjoining residence or business has a key, and anyone other than those people aren't able to enter that alleyway. And if anyone was in breach of that, so someone who hasn't got a key, who hasn't got an adjoining resident, it could be the police could be called, and they would be breaching the PSBO. So that's why it is. It's around trying to prevent people fly tipping in other people's alleyways or any other sort of ASB that's been highlighted. We've got a whole evidence base of a variety of antisocial behaviour, including drug taking, drug dealing, and well, all sorts. There's some of the roads identified have got serious problems, sex workers and fly tipping, dog fouling, and although, as has been said before, sometimes it is residents or landlords who are fly tipping in their own area, it still makes it a lot easier to identify who, once the gates are in place, identify if residents actually are doing that, because the enforcement team know it's restricted who's been entering that alleyway, so they can come in and they can look at bin bags, they can try and identify where the fly tipping has come from, which should make it easier to enforce on who's done the fly tipping. But that's if anyone was in breach of that, then the police could be called, that's how it works, and they'd be found, or there would have to be evidence to show that they were in that alleyway and they haven't got an adjoining residence or business.
Thanks. I think it was just about the specific phrase, but you could easily email Councillor Williams with the
I'll go back to
a phrase that looks a bit too limited as opposed to more all-encompassing.
Okay.
Councillor Kenny?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And first of all, thanks to Nikki and Joe for bringing this paper towards us tonight. I think, like everybody else, I very much welcome this initiative and support it. As a councillor for the Bidson and St James's ward, I've actually had personal experience of seeing how Safer Streets has worked in the north end of Birkenhead, and it has been very successful. It's been very much appreciated by residents. In fact, we've got numerous examples of areas where perhaps in the past residents have hardly spoken to the next door neighbour, but as a result of the introduction of Safer Streets, they've cleaned up the alleyways, they've taken time and money themselves to actually improve it with their potted plants, etc. And the whole area has been dramatically improved, and it's just given everybody a feel-good factor. So it's worked really well in the north end of Birkenhead so far. So I'm really pleased that it's coming out now into other areas within the Wirral. I just would make one plea, is that we keep talking about the alley gates, and the alley gates do work, but only when people remember to shut them. Only this afternoon I was at a meeting where a resident said to me, "Oh, the alley gates are brilliant," but this morning she got up, one of the alley gates had been left open, and somebody had left a mattress and all sorts of fly tipping in there. Whether it was one of the local residents, we don't know. But I just think, as part of the whole initiative, if we can try and get the message across to everybody concerned that they need to remember to shut the alley gates, otherwise there's just no point. And I think another positive of this whole initiative, it will help the police, it will help the Merseyside Fire and Rescue Authority, it will help council staff, because there'll be a lot less issues to have to deal with, antisocial behaviour issues, etc. So it's a win-win for everybody, and of course the residents themselves will be very happy. I've just got one question really, Chair. The report in some places talks about Birkenhead, other places talks about Birkenhead Central, and it also talks about Birkenhead and Tranmere. I just think we need to be clear exactly where we're talking about, because if some people see the report and think, well, everybody in Birkenhead is going to get some benefit from safer streets, and then they find, no, hang on, it's only, you know, Birkenhead and Tranmere Ward, for example. So I think we need to clarify exactly what parts of Birkenhead are going to benefit from the initiative for safer streets too. But having said that, I very much welcome the whole thing. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Kenny. It's Birkenhead and Tranmere Ward and Seacombe Ward, and it's identified alleyways within both those areas. And actually, the area that the bid showed that was successful was exactly the same area as the Birkenhead regeneration framework, so it sort of complements their activities as well. So it's it'll add the community safety element to their developments. So they're the two wards.
Councillor Booth.
Thanks, Chair. Just regarding Safer Streets 2, I'm just curious what the marketing campaigns will involve, whether it follows on from what Councillor Kenny was saying about communicating about closing the gates, for example. I was just curious what that would involve. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Booth. The marketing element of the bid. Thanks, Councillor Booth. The marketing element of the bid is £10,000, and it's actually with one of our partners. There's two key partners in Safer Streets 2. It's led by ourselves and Merseyside Police and the PCC partners. We've also got a range of wider partners as well, including the housing associations, community groups, connectors. But the three main partners are ourselves, Merseyside Police and the PCC. So Merseyside Police are in control of the marketing funds. So our comms and their comms meet and discuss how that £10,000 could be best and most effectively spent. So they're looking at that at the moment. In Safer Streets 1, they did quite a lot of bus shelter posters, bus posters, highlighting keeping safe, but they also did some target hardening and consultation with it. So people got, we did a series of sort of bike marking, giving out some target hardening, sort of window locks and that type of thing. But whether they'll do it this time, they haven't actually decided yet. But I'll keep you updated as soon as they've come up with their action plan for that.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing the report, and there is a little bit of publicity around Safer Streets 1, which shows how successful it was. I think the reason that this was on the agenda was for the PSPOs that were required for this next phase, but it seems to be certainly successful. I just wanted to ask about the clearing. So you mentioned that there was £12,000 for cleansing. Previously, was it part of the restorative justice issue? Was it part of people working in the community, and how did we navigate that? Is that not an option going forward?
Yeah, you're quite right, Councillor Clement. We did work with Community Payback for, well, the past 4 years, and a lot of the councillors in this room have seen how well they've helped us with clearing alleyways. So we just had an agreement with them, particularly in Birkenhead at the time, because that was one of our priorities that came out of the constituency committees that took place at the time. And so we worked with them, and we actually had them for 5 days a week and directed them to add value to the work of BIFA. So we worked closely with the environmental team to identify areas where they could add value. And unfortunately, throughout COVID, they've not been able to come back and do that due to their own risk assessments. And the fact that they used to arrive in minibuses, and we had to sort out areas that they could go if it rained, and areas that they can go for toilet and lunch. And with COVID, unfortunately, they haven't remobilised yet, because they've got to get those things in place to look after their users. So, but I have been in contact with them throughout COVID, and as soon as their risk assessments are completed and they're remobilised, they'll be back working with us. We've already they did do some work at Prenton Rugby Club, because they needed an area that was very spread out, and they were able to do that during COVID. But to go back to the alleyways, I think it's imminent, but they've just got to get it signed off, and then we'll be back on track, because Councillor Brayman and we've got a waiting list of areas that we want to focus on, and I think they'll be a key partner in trying to roll out and do more transformations.
More good news, thank you. Well, I'm happy to propose this. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cleary, thank you. Do we agree by assent? Thank you. Would any members like to take a comfort break? I know it's only an hour and a half, but if you want to, before we address the next item, or... Yes? Yeah, should we say 10 minutes? Thank you. The draft delivery plans are on pages 51 to 64 in your pack, and I'd like to invite Vicky Butterworth to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this report presents the Wirral Plan 21 to 26 and the draft delivery plans. The Wirral Plan 2026 was agreed at Council on the 6th of September this year. The Council also agreed the draft delivery plans that sit underneath the Wirral Plan. These give more detail about the 5 themes and the specific actions we need to take in the coming months and years. Council recommended that these draft delivery plans should be referenced to committees for further consideration and any final comment and input. Officers will be bringing updates on these priorities to committees to show the progress and developments on the delivery plans. So the report recommendations ask the committee members to consider the draft delivery plan set out in Appendix 1 to this report, and also to agree the specific thematic priorities within the remit of this committee. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Gilchrist.
Will I shout? Oh no, I'm doing well. Having got the plot back, the document about community and leisure strategies mentions the library strategy. The library consultation was extended to get as many people involved as possible in it and get a fair picture. I'm wondering if there's a timetable for us to have the information from that so that we can plan ahead, involve the communities and build the best network we can.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Gilchrist. So the library consultation finished, I think it was the 20th of September, and pleased to say we did actually get a really good response. It was around 1,600 responses, which is one of the highest I've heard of any consultation. So in that respect, it was really good. The extension, Councillor Gilchrist, does mean that we have had to slip back the final report on, so it was an 8-week extension. So we that will add on to the time it will take to produce the report. So at the minute, all those consultation responses are being crunched through in terms of what will go into that final report that will come to this committee early next year.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I have a question about the cross-cutting themes that we have. We have in our section, which we're focusing on tonight, elements around culture and heritage. The lead committee at the moment is Economy and Regen in the strategy document, and it might be helpful if that was mentioned that it's cross-cutting, because we have lots of cross-cutting themes. The other cross-cutting theme we have already sits with the lead committee is the Adults Committee, and they lead on the domestic abuse strategy, but naturally we had the community safety strategy that was agreed at full council as well that went through. So I'm really unsure as to why particularly road safety had to come off our committee and couldn't remain as a cross-cutting theme. It certainly was on previously, and we have the Safe Wirral Partnership Board and we have the governance arrangements around that. It is embedded into the community safety strategy, which is also amended. So I would propose that road safety can easily sit on both committees. It's the same directorate, and it just is yet another cross-cutting theme. So I'm happy to have a debate on that if anybody wants to come in. Councillor Cleary.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, my understanding is we will still get reports back through the community safety strategy to this committee on road safety, and perhaps officers could just confirm that that would be the case, and we'll still have the opportunity to scrutinise and comment on road safety through that reporting mechanism.
Councillor Cleary, yes, I can confirm that's the case. We will come back here through the updates to the community safety strategy, of which road safety sits as part of that.
So, do you feel it's fundamentally different to all of the other cross-cutting themes, where we are really keen to hear about the cultural access that you've talked about and the Birkenhead regeneration plans around heritage? The lead committee isn't this committee, but obviously it sits again in our plans as you'd expect. Do you feel that road safety is distinctly different to any of the other cross-cutting themes?
Well, what I would say is I think what Nikki has said kind of confirms that this committee still has a role in scrutinising and commenting on road safety. To me, that answers the question that we still. That confirms to me the cross-cutting nature of the topic. I think obviously the Environment Committee is looking particularly at road safety, and particularly in terms of the 20-mile-an-hour zones. And that's a big part of their work programme going forward. So that's a very major factor in what they will be looking at going forward. So personally, I don't see a problem as such. I'm not aware what the issue is, and I don't see a need for any particular change. There is an obligation on all of us to work on these really important topics across committees. So I think from my point of view, Nikki has given a reassurance around our role in terms of looking at road safety.
Yes, I tend to agree. The governance arrangements and the constitution is quite clear. It's just that the conversation at full council revolved around it needs to be removed and put back to the committee. These plans are by theme. There is a lead committee. It actually is structured really by directorate, not so much by committee. And I want it to be seen as such. I want it to be seen as a theme-based strategy that is aligned to directorate with cross-cutting themes that come across, and road safety is a cross-cutting theme. I don't feel it needs to be removed in order to be added to another committee. I think it could sit well on both. If that's something, we may as well take a vote on. I want to come in. Councillor Gilchrist and then Councillor Bird.
Sorry, I should put it simply this way: where there's a will, there's a way, and members will find a way to discuss things. So the Constitution is written a particular way as chair. The standards in Constitution Committee, many of us are on a working party that spent weeks trying to put it together. So if there are cross-cutting things, I'm sure we'll find a way. And if I just be choose to be flippant for a minute, why did the children cross the road to get to the park on the other side?
Councillor Bird?
Thanks. I'm not sure. You say might go to a vote. If there's a specific proposal, could it be written? I didn't see it in the papers for the committee. Maybe it's something that could be deferred till it's been discussed in the appropriate forum. It would seem to me, just on the face of it, that the lead committee would be the one that has the budget and the responsibility for roads and road safety. And but like Councillor Gilchrist put so well, it's where there's a will, there's a way. And if the committee wants to talk about something or scrutinise the work of something else, then it has absolutely every right to do that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm aware of the committee's remit. It's the delivery document. I don't know why it needs to be removed. That's the question I'm posing. Why couldn't it exist on both along with lots of other things? So it's just a question that was putting forward because it was missed slightly at full council as to the reference was made. Can it be removed from other committees and put back to the committee? And it's not about committees. There is only a lead committee. This is about themes and it's more aligned to directorate and that doesn't alter. But yes, certainly it doesn't alter the remit of this committee and I'm aware of that. But if there's no will for it, then I don't think there's any point in going to a vote. If there's no will to make sure that it's part of our key deliverables in this particular theme. Does anybody else have any comments also about a whole section was removed again around the implementation of major capital infrastructure investment? So it was mainly about LEDs along with other programmes where, of course, the lead committee is the environment, but we know that community safety and safe and pleasant communities as a theme is also cross-cutting around, you know, how people feel safe depending on street lighting, etc., etc. Was everybody happy for that to just be removed, or would anybody like to retain it as a cross-cutting theme? I'm taking the silence as a no. Everyone's happy to reshape that. That's fine. So this committee has lost, section on safe and pleasant communities has lost two sections. Does anybody want to add anything? Because I think what's missing in this section is particularly how we can capitalise on all of the community cohesion and goodwill that was seen in the last 2 years, working with the voluntary charities, faith sectors. I think in terms of safe and pleasant communities and the remit of this committee, we should definitely have a theme around encouraging more community engagement. Is that something that anybody would like to discuss further? No. So no one has any further input on the delivery strategy for the next 5 years that has this committee as its lead committee. Thank you. Councillor Wood.
Thanks, Chair. No, I'm just a little bit confused by some of the posing and the question here, but what you just highlighted then in terms of the community cohesion and the offer, then whether that's cross-cutting or whether that should sit here, I feel that's imperative to everything that there's. But that's just my personally sort of bringing this, that community cohesion and the benefits that then has across all other areas is vital and important. But I'm just a little bit confused about some of the things that you've posed a bit about. Excuse me, if you could sort of clarify, because it was just, when you were saying the words removed, are you saying in terms of documents or removed from this committee? I just want clarification. No. Sorry.
So the committee's remit cannot be altered. The strategy documents for the next 5 years is trying to be all-encompassing whilst being flexible and adapting and an iterative process, but key deliverables. And I mentioned, I think you were here, or you obviously see it in the minutes, last time I added to the work programme, because this committee, it's section, let me just see what I added to it. Section, paragraph 2b, part 3b of the Constitution for this terms of reference to this committee says, community engagement, incorporating the Council's approach to equalities, inclusion, communities, neighbourhoods and the voluntary and charitable sector, community wealth building and social value. So I added to the work programme for this committee that a report comes to this committee. And the main element I'd like to really look at is how we don't lose all of the goodwill we saw during the last 2 years, that we capitalise on that, that we facilitate that, that we help that we enable more people to volunteer, and all of that bit that comes back to community cohesion, because so it's added onto the work programme hopefully at some point in the new year. And therefore I just thought that it doesn't seem to be present, unless anybody can spot it in a different section, it doesn't seem to be present on here. And I'd just like something to be added so that it can be a theme that has an action to it, and that action has a timescale, and that timescale is to deliver certain actions that we've decided. That's what I'm just looking for. At this moment in time, it can just be a headline, but I can't find it anywhere else in this report. Something you'd like officers to take away and have a look at and maybe add in?
If I may, Chair, then ultimately, because that's part of what we've been progressing, so I don't see why we wouldn't want to understand and fully see about community cohesion and what those cost benefits are, because it has impact across so many other services as well. So I'd say yes, but I'm very much coming out on a limb on that one.
Thanks, Chair. Just going back to the original point on, I think it makes logical sense that there wouldn't be any point to remove things already on the committee based on cross-committee workings and community cohesion, like you mentioned. And where there's a will, there's a way. If it was on the committee anyway, and you wanted to speak about it, what would be the point of removing it? Just a bit confused by those comments. To say that if you wanted to speak about something that was on a different committee, if it's already on the committee, why would we be removing it? Was that your original point? If so, I'd be happy to second it if you wanted to go to the vote. Because I think it makes logical sense.
Yeah, there are two issues that run concurrent. We're clear what the Constitution is and the remit of this committee. And the community safety plan was already agreed at Council. The community safety plan includes road safety. So they're two separate issues. This committee will still be able to look at road safety. There's still a governance structure. But the document that was amended before it had come to this committee was amended at full council just to remove things and put them in different sections. So it was just a challenge as to why they can't be cross-cutting. But the latter point about community cohesion that Councillor Wood has commented on, I think that's something, if anybody else wants to come in on, I think that's something we could probably all agree on, unless there's any dissent on that. So the recommendation really would be that officers, and it isn't particularly the officers that are with us this evening, we do sit across different committees, that officers have a look at how they can add into the delivery plan for the next 5 years a clear section around particularly the voluntary sector, particularly communities and the third sector. Thank you, that's great. So this leads us on to, we need to accept the rest of it as it exists. So the actual recommendation is Tourism Communities Culture and Leisure Committee is recommended to consider and comment on the draft delivery plans as they relate to tourism set out in the appendix. So we were just considering and commenting it. So there's only one recommendation there, which is just a little addition that can be fleshed out at a later date. Yes, Councillor Johnson?
Thank you. Thank you. Just in relation to housing, when we're looking at affordable housing, I think we need to go beyond affordable housing per se. And this again goes into obviously the housing remit, doesn't it? But we are thinking here about affordability, sustainability. Shouldn't we be looking at electric charging points, insulation, solar panels, and that being part of reducing the energy pricing and indeed reducing the energy costs across our borough? I know that's something elsewhere. So we've got a lot of themes here which cut across, but surely with affordable housing we should be trying to also enable those residents to have cheaper energy as well, and building that into the housing pot as well per se. Thank you.
Yes, I tend to agree. However, unfortunately, we're given specific instruction on this delivery plan to look at our own section where we are the lead committee, even though, yes, there's lots of cross-cutting themes. But naturally, we have the same director here that covers both elements. And we're talking about a strategy document. In actual fact, the delivery services, it does sit with you. But yes, good point at the moment. So we're happy to agree by assent with the one addition? Thank you. Okay. We have a slight change to the normal flow, and that's because we're just going to come to the work programme at the moment, which is in your pack, pages 65 to 74. I'm happy to open that report, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments that anybody has about the work programme. No, everybody pretty happy? There has been some slippage that I'm not particularly happy with. I fully understand why, and it is a difficult situation, but we were hoping to have a report. Well, Sally Shaw was hoping to bring a report in September. It then slipped to October, and unfortunately it has slipped again. So I just want to take this moment to remind everybody that really 2 or 3 months, I think, is acceptable, but beyond that, I'm not very comfortable at all. But other than that, the work programme is pretty full, and I think we're ploughing through it. So, is everybody happy to agree by assent, the work programme? Great, thanks. Which then is item number 10, which is the Tourism Communities Culture and Leisure Performance Reports in your packets, pages 75 to 92. And I'd like to invite Andy McCartan to present the report.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee for allowing me to present this report on the performance of a group of services within my portfolio. So it's leisure, libraries and museums. It provides information to the group of neighbourhood services that this reports to this committee. It was designed based on discussions with members through the working group activity. Members' requests have been incorporated into the report at this committee meeting, and the recommendation is that the Tourism Communities Culture and Leisure Committee note the contents of the report and highlight any areas requiring further clarification or action. If I could just add that this report is the first performance report to come to this committee. The first sections are quite operational, so it shows the performance of the leisure centres and some information throughout the pandemic around online activity, social media activity, and members will be aware that many of our centres didn't open in full until September of this year. So I'm pleased to say that the majority of sites are now back at full occupancy, with the exception of the Oval, which is the Oval Sports Hall, which is continued to be used as a vaccination site, and Woodchurch. I should also add that direct debits for these services will be reintroduced in October and November this year, so I would expect to see quite a sharp spike in a lot of these figures from then on. So I'm expecting this report to evolve really as more and more services reopen. We get more members back through our sites, through our libraries, through the museum. The latter section of the report provides what I feel is a really important and emerging body of work, and will very much be critical to our sport and physical activity strategy, which will come here next month. So it highlights some of what I would consider the hidden work of leisure services, where we work with our sports development unit, work with the police, excuse me, and a number of partners in terms of outreach work. There's information there around social value and some information on the health of our residents. So a lot of that work has been done utilising some emerging sort of national databases created by the likes of Sport England and DCMS. So I see those latter sort of slides as a really, really important and evolving piece of work. But if you've got any questions on any of that, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy to take questions on the dashboards, the emerging dashboards. Councillor Gilchrist.
Just a comment, it would probably be helpful to members of the committee to have a strap line along the bottom where we're comparing years and years as to when the lockdowns happened. The dates are in the Public Health Annual Report, so I don't have to look them up, but I could look them up and I'll send them to everyone. But essentially, it would help us understand what was going on if we knew what was full lockdown, what was partial lockdown, and what things were preventing us from operating at the time, because year-on-year comparisons are very difficult in the small format.
Yes, thank you. I think so. Annotate the timeline as to the key dates when things were permitted and not permitted. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And also, year-on-year comparisons will be difficult going forward on so many measures. So I think what might be helpful on some of these charts is if we could see capacity as a line, and then we can see what we're achieving versus what's possible. So if there was a capacity around the number of people who can attend classes, and that is limited, at least we could be at 80% of that capacity or 90% of that capacity, even though that's still 60% of what was going on last year. So I don't want to create another whole layer to put into the tool, but if there was some kind of capacity where we could see people returning to the services and people using the services, even though some of those services still remain limited to do with where the building is. Even online, I think you would think online classes, the capacity is unlimited, but in actual fact it still takes place physically in some way. So probably those 2 points can come at the same time. Thanks. Just put yours on. Councillor Wood. Oh, you want to take them all at the end, all the questions? That's okay. Councillor Wood.
Thank you for the report. I think I've mentioned this in workshop as well, is just that sort of building on that, I'd like to be able to see what the metrics are in terms of social demographics, gender, but in particular how people are getting to these, whether it's the library, the leisure centre, or going to, so I want to be able to see, are people travelling by car, are they using public transport, is it active travel that they're using? So it's building on those metrics, and also then that would show us that what happens during different months, so seasonality in terms of what access to type of vehicles or transport people use. So it's just whether that could be a running theme through all of those different areas.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Yeah, so on one of the slides refers to the active live survey. Now, what the information that's currently on that slide is mainly around health, but the actual questionnaire does go into a lot more detail, so we can certainly look at pulling some of that detail out of that questionnaire to give a better picture. So yes, we can do that.
Thanks, Andy, for the report. I found it very helpful to have the comparative data. A lot of the statistics track Wirral's performance over time over the last 3 years, and also some of the data compares Wirral to the England picture, and that's also very useful, so thanks for that.
Thank you. So, yes, thanks for the reports. Really great detail, and we understand it's an iterative process. I don't think it's in the BI tool, is it yet? So it's still a fairly manual. The data's in, but the representation we're seeing here is still fairly manual. But yes, it's good information, and we want to make all these decisions based on the evidence. So that brings us to the recommendation for item number 10, which is that the Tourism Communities Culture and Leisure Committee note the content of the report and highlight any areas requiring further clarification or action. So we're all happy to agree by assent on that item. Thank you. Thank you. That brings us to the end of our meeting. Thanks for your time.